What's going on, everyone, and welcome to my post-2024 season roller coaster countdown. I'm going to come out and say it, 2024 was a very weak year for me when it came to riding new roller coasters as a whole. This was mainly driven by the fact the United States had a terrible year opening up new roller coasters worthy of traveling to. That in turn means my top 50 roller coasters from last year really haven't changed all that much. If you want to see my list from last season, which largely resemble my current rankings, feel free to click on the icons on the screen to those videos. Instead, this year, I'm going to count down my top 25 wooden roller coasters to highlight some rides I don't talk about as much that deserve some recognition. Before I get into the list, I will go ahead and do a quick synopsis of trips I made this season and how some of my coaster opinions may have evolved from previous rankings. I picked up only 27 new credits this season, and the majority of those came from these 4 parks that I visited for the first time in 2024. After a few years, I made return trips to Worlds of Fun and Valley Fair. I also made it back to Silver Dollar City for a second year in a row. The best new credit I got this year was Monster at Adventureland, the fantastic Gerstlauer Infinity coaster that just barely missed my top 50 overall rankings. In terms of my overall rankings, rides like Prowler and Air Force One rose, while rides like Fury 325 and Wildcat's Revenge fell. Okay, now let's talk about the wooden roller coasters. Admittedly, wooden coasters are more similar to each other than steel roller coasters are. So I'm going to do my best to keep my opinions on some of these rides short and try not to be repetitive. The main things I look for in a wooden roller coaster are how well they incorporate different types of forces, whether it's airtime, lateral forces, or positive Gs, how good is the pacing and or sense of speed, and how well does it ride as a wooden roller coaster. What I mean by that is, are they well maintained, but still feel like you're riding a wooden roller coaster? I've grown to be able to tolerate some rougher rides, but the good ones are also adding in forces to counter the roughness. Conversely, I also don't like wooden roller coasters that are so smooth that it almost feels like you're riding a steel roller coaster. That's a significant reason why I prefer wooden roller coasters in general. That wooden roller coaster bite really does add something for me that I truly appreciate. Finally, as with all my countdowns, this is a subjective list. My opinions will almost certainly differ from yours, and that in my opinion is what makes this hobby great. Alright, now that I've gotten all that out of the way, let the countdown begin. Kicking off the top 25 is the best roller coaster at Knoebels Amusement Resort. You all know it. Twister! Yes, I prefer this in-house creation from 1999 over the repeated Golden Ticket Award winner on the other side of the park. Frankly, Phoenix's airtime doesn't do for me, and I prefer the quirky lateral-filled layout Twister has. From the weird double lift hill to the forceful double helix, Twister packs a serious punch that I wish more people appreciated. The first Great Coasters International appearance on this list is from Texas Stingray down at SeaWorld San Antonio. The atypical straight first drop, as opposed to the standard GCI curved first drop, does give this ride an advantage at the start. I also remember my 2020 rides having the wooden coaster roughness that I seek. What keeps this ride in the middle tier of the GCIs for me is several of the twisted turns are taken higher off the ground, which does hurt the pacing. Nevertheless, this was a nice addition for the San Antonio park. A ride I feel gets way more hate than it deserves is the Boss at Six Flags St. Louis. The sense of speed during the first half of the Boss is what stands out to me. Going down the towering first drop into a straightaway section is a fantastic opening. I also appreciate how well it uses the hilly terrain, particularly in the second half. My biggest complaint with the Boss are honestly the trains. I'm not the biggest fan of the Gerstlauer trains and wish they ran with standard PTC trains. Selfishly, I hope this ride sticks around for the long haul, but being as neglected as Six Flags St. Louis unfortunately is, I could understand an RMC conversion to give this park a standout it deserves. Heading over to my home state, a ride that certainly punches above its weight class for me at least is the Cornball Express at Indiana Beach. The reason I don't like Phoenix that much is how much of a one-trick pony it is. Cornball Express solves the problem, mixing in both strong airtime and a lot of lateral forces, particularly on the helix towards the end of the ride. It really surprises me how a ride that's only 55 feet tall is able to provide a complete experience in the way it does. Staying in the Hoosier State, we go down south to Holiday World for the Raven. This former Golden Ticket Award winner has held up well over the years, especially being that Holiday World takes care of their wooden coasters better than anyone. The first half of the ride is good, combining airtime and a swoop over a lake, but the second half is where the Raven shines, with that massive fifth drop into a high-paced and forceful finale. Raven might be the weakest of the thrill coasters at Holiday World, but by no means is this one ride to skip when visiting the park. This next wooden coaster really brings the airtime. I'm talking about Shivering Timbers at Michigan's Adventure. I know I kept picking on Phoenix, and granted its airtime is stronger due to its buzz bars, but Shivering Timbers has a faster consistent speed and throws airtime hill after airtime hill at you the whole layout, which is impressively about a mile long. The rides I've gotten in both 2021 and 2022 delivered, and the track has a pretty good feel to it if I remember correctly. This is certainly not the easiest park to link in with a coaster trip, but Shivering Timbers is a ride that should be on people's bucket list if they haven't ridden it. Probably more than any coaster on this list, the one I need to re-ride the most is Boulder Dash at Lake Compounce. I haven't been on this ride since 2019, so my memory of it is a bit foggy, but from what I remember, Boulder Dash is another terrain coaster that does a good job keeping its speed as it traverses a mountainside. Part of me thinks I would like it more now, because my roughness tolerance has gone up over the years, but I also don't remember just how good the lateral forces throughout and the airtime hill run at the end were. I think this is a pretty good spot for Boulder Dash right now. Unfortunately, I may not be making a stop at Lake Compounce anytime in the near future. This next ride, I think I have a bit of a lower opinion than most, but here's Mystic Timbers at Kings Island. Remember how I mentioned I don't want wooden roller coasters to be so smooth that they almost feel like steel coasters? Case in point, Mystic Timbers is a ride I have always felt is almost too smooth for its own good. Sure, the pacing of Mystic Timbers is pretty good, but no one moment really stands out to me, and I don't think the airtime is as good as most people say. Still, Mystic does benefit from being at a park without a standout coaster, so it does get some points for me from that. Let's roll out back-to-back hot takes. The only new credit I got in 2024 to make this list is Zambezi Zinger from Worlds of Fun. I had heard mostly negative reviews for this ride, so my expectations may have been tempered a bit, but this ride sneakily was a powerhouse. Sure, the first attempt at the GCI Infinity Flyer trains, particularly the lap bars, may not have been the best, but outside of that, this ride really had some great lateral forces and fast-paced transitions, especially in the second half. The addition of Zambezi Zinger, along with a couple of other things, has really strengthened Worlds of Fun's lineup. From a 2024 new credit to a 2023 new credit, the only wooden coaster outside the United States to make my list is Tonnerre 2 Zeus at Parc S Streaks. Formerly known as Tonnerre des Zeus, this CCI was retracked and partially reprofiled by the Gravity Group. In most seats, this was a good, but not great ride. The back seat, however, faced backwards, and the two rides I got back there were incredible. Going flying out of your seat going down the first drop was insane, and set the tone for a fantastic ride. Unfortunately, Parc S Streaks has since discontinued the backwards seats, which I was disappointed to hear. I'm certainly glad I got to have that experience. Next on the list is the king of lateral forces, the Legend from Holiday World. I don't know if there's another coaster that forces you to the side of your seat as aggressively as Legend does. Legend has a couple of curve drops that are a nice appetizer to the double helix, which is the ultimate bombardment of laterals. Legend does lack a little bit in the airtime department outside of one moment. Perhaps the thing I hate the most about this ride is the queue and how tightly compact you are with the people next to you. That aside, Legend is one of those rides my appreciation has grown stronger as I have made yearly trips to Holiday World. This next coaster is partially the only defunct wooden coaster on this list. This is Rampage at Alabama Adventure. If you followed the news, Rampage was closed the entire 2024 season, and its wooden track was removed and replaced completely with steel track. Unfortunately, this no longer will be classified as a wooden coaster, but until I ride the updated version, it'll stay in my wooden coaster ranks. Rampage is the best coaster from Custom Coasters International I've ridden, and where Legend lacks in forces outside of laterals, Rampage combines all of them into a beautiful ride experience. Rampage's highlight, though, is the first drop from the back seat, one of the strongest airtime moments out there. I'm sad to see this no longer be a true Woody, but I understand Alabama Adventure making this decision to keep this gem open for years to come. RMC came on the scene in the 2010s, and one of their earlier creations was Goliath at Six Flags Great America. This may not be the longest layout, but it certainly packs a punch. The first drop is definitely one of the better ones on a wooden roller coaster, and the pacing throughout is strong. The highlight moment outside of the first drop has to be the zero-G stall, one of the best sensations on a roller coaster, and Goliath is executed extremely well. I do wish this ride was a little longer and did have more than one ejector airtime moment, but this still delivers a terrific ride experience. Next up is a GCI I find to be a bit on the underrated side. This is Apocalypse at Six Flags Magic Mountain. This is another ride I find has a really good first drop. Instead of going straight down this time, you pick up some speed on a turnaround first, and then you drop off. The other thing I've noticed from my rides in 2021 was this ride has some great pacing, which I think at least can partially be attributed to the warm weather climate. There weren't any airtime or lateral moments I remember really standing out, but this was just an overall fun coaster and was one of the better ones in a park that has a stacked coaster lineup. Heading back down to Texas, this time heading near the Gulf Shores lies the fantastic Boardwalk Bullet at Kima Boardwalk. I love how compact this ride is, which does work to its advantage. The first sequence of low-to-the-ground turns, with how forceful they are both from a positive G and lateral force perspective, makes for an incredible start. My biggest disappointment from Boardwalk Bullet is I wish sections of the ride after that opening matched with the same ferocity. That said, while the pacing does get hurt from some elements as they are taken higher off the ground, it is still so compact, and the constant tight turns makes for quite the aggressive ride. I do think there's a step up here in quality into my top 10, and kicking this off is the GCI Thunderhead at Dollywood. In my 3 visits to Dollywood, this ride has gotten better and better thanks to the track work performed by the park. Conversely, from Boardwalk Bullet before, Thunderhead starts off with its elements higher off the ground, and the ride continuously lowers down and picks up its speed throughout the ride. The first half is more about the lateral forces, and the second half provides more airtime pops. There are still few GCIs I have ahead of Thunderhead in my rankings, but in general, this ride does have the full package and is beloved by many, including myself. These next 2 rides were coaster milestones for me, and my 100th coaster I rode was Renegade at Valley Fair. I made my 3rd visit to Valley Fair in 2024, and it recaptured my love for this ride when I first rode it in 2018. Renegade has some serious power, with moments of sustained flow to airtime and strong pacing. After the S-curve first drop and airtime hill, there's a turnaround in which you exit out of it with one of the most unsuspecting airtime jolts I have experienced. And outside of a slight pothole at the bottom of the first drop, this ride runs beautifully. I seriously wish I had a GCI closer to home that had the punch that Renegade throws at you. The other milestone, my 200th coaster ridden, was Ravine Flyer 2 at Waldameer. This Gravity Group wooden coaster has been referred to as the poor man's version of another coaster that's higher on my list, but there's no doubt Ravine Flyer 2 is fantastic itself. The first drop starts with a great view of Lake Erie, then curves down and sends you across a bridge twice. The second half of the ride is more of a twister style, delivering decent moments of airtime and a good lateral moment diving down into a ravine. The only negative on this ride is the last stretch does lose a lot of speed and sort of crawls into the final brake run. Overall though, this ride makes a small park like Waldameer a destination and is one of the better woodies you'll find out there. The biggest riser for wooden coasters this past season I had previously ridden was Prowler at Worlds of Fun. I remembered my 2020 rides being good and better than a similar coaster in Mystic Timbers, but my 2024 rides were on another level. The name of the game with this GCI is power because every single airtime hill is strong, sustained floater to a borderline ejective airtime. The pacing of Prowler is also a highlight, going at full speed from the first drop all the way down to the brake run. Before 2024, I knew this ride was good and was underrated, but now I think this ride is criminally underrated and deserves a lot more respect as one of the best GCIs out there. Another ride I finally got more rides on in 2024 was Hades 360 at Mount Olympus. This park, in my opinion, is not run well, and I wish they didn't have a ride of this caliber, but there's no denying how intense Hades 360 is. The ride by no means is smooth, but like I said in the beginning, because this ride is so aggressive and throws so many forces at you, I think it offsets the roughness quite a bit. The 2 stretches under the parking lot in darkness are some of the most intense sections of roller coaster out there. I'm extremely thankful I finally got more rides in 2024 to confirm this ride is as legit as I remember, but with the state of Mount Olympus, it is unlikely I will return anytime in the foreseeable future. Now we've arrived at the top 5, and here's one of the more popular coasters among enthusiasts. This is El Toro at Six Flags Great Adventure. Another ride I am in desperate need of re-riding, as I only have my visit in 2019 to go off of, but El Toro has 4 of the greatest airtime moments on the planet. Between the first drop, especially if you are in the back, the 2 massive camel hills, and the insane launch out of your seat moment at the Rolling Thunder Hill, this makes it a bucket list ride for many. Unfortunately, I cannot rank this higher, as while the airtime is extraordinary, the layout around it is rather lackluster. I really need more rides on El Toro at some point to verify my opinion, but no doubt the memory of those airtime moments will stick with me for quite a while. The best coaster I've ridden by Grid Coasters International is the amazing Gold Striker, California's Great America. I am so incredibly disappointed this ride probably has an expiration date in the next few years, but the furious nature of this ride compared to any other GCI is unbelievable. No other GCI throws legitimate ejector airtime at you like Gold Striker does. No other GCI has violent lateral turns and maneuvers like Gold Striker does. And no other GCI can match the ridiculous pacing Gold Striker has. There have been several coaster closings recently I have not traveled for to ride one final time. Gold Striker, however, will be one of those rides for me if a park closure is announced. I will make a point to get out there one more time before it closes down. Perhaps the hottest take I have in my arsenal is I think that Mind Blower at Fun Spot Kissimmee is an incredible roller coaster. I'll preface by saying I have not ridden it yet with any of the RMC retracking, so my opinion might be a little out of date, but I cannot deny my love for this ride. Similar to Hades, this ride is not smooth. In fact, I will pretty confidently say this ride is rougher than Hades 360. However, if you can get a ride with a full train, I think that tempers the roughness down a bit. That said, because this ride is so compact, it tears through its course with such aggression I have to give it its flowers. At no point from the first drop to the brakes does this ride let up, and every force imaginable will be exerted on you. Personally, I would love to see more rides like this pop up, but Gravity Group does need to make improvements to its track work for more parks to be convinced like I am. There are two wooden roller coasters to me that easily stand out above the rest. At number 2 is Outlaw Run at Silver Dollar City. I know this ride is short, but every single element on Outlaw Run has a clear purpose and executes its intention perfectly. The first drop is terrific, the airtime throughout is so strong, the lateral forces between the overbanked inversion and the wave turn are spectacular, you get positive G's low to the ground as you hug the mountainous terrain, and the hang time on the double barrel roll is the cherry on top. Frankly, Outlaw Run is next to flawless in my opinion, and having made 4 visits to this park now, I know this ride isn't leaving my overall top 10 anytime soon. But of course, taking the top spot is my favorite coaster of all time, that being the Voyage at Holiday World. No other coaster out there rips through a layout this long with such pacing as Voyage does. It's truly remarkable what Holiday World and the Gravity Group did to put this creation on Earth. Speed on the twister section and the return trip coupled with all the lateral and positive G-forces is just something that needs to be experienced to be believed. Frankly, because 2024 was not a great year for riding coasters for me, and how much better Voyage was than anything else I had ridden prior to my visit in October, I don't think I've ever been more sure Voyage is not only the best wooden coaster I've ridden, but flat out the best coaster I have been on. And that concludes my top 25 wooden roller coaster rankings. A couple of coasters to mention before I end the video. I've talked about Phoenix not making my top 25 because of how one-dimensional it is, but what about Ghost Rider at Knott's Berry Farm? Frankly, I just didn't get what the hype was about based on my rides in 2021. I certainly don't want to write this ride off, climbing in my rankings in the future, but the forces just lack significantly all around for me on my one visit. I want to thank you for listening to my 2024 coaster countdown. 2024 was not the best year in regards to riding coasters, but it's looking promising that 2025 will be a better year in that department. I look forward to riding new coasters like Siren's Curse, Fire Runner, and even Alpen Fury. But above all, I have flights booked now for my next big coaster trip in 2025 that I'm really excited to share with you in the future. But for now, I'm signing off. Have a great day everyone and take it easy.